are events from Reddit. Events so scary, you wish they were only in your nightmares. Viewer discretion is advised. There are people that live in the woods.
I will do my best to keep this one short. I was a camp counselor for several years. We always were responsible for creating fun games to keep the kids entertained. At the same time, we pulled a bunch of pranks on one another to keep things light. So one night we planned a game of tag in the dark. Our camp was by the woods even though the tree lines were pretty thick. There were some spots without a lot of trees which made for a great game of tag. As a counselor, I like to believe I was smarter than most 12, 16-year-old kids. I mean, I was 18 at the time. One things I always did when playing tag was try and stay on the outside of the chaos. I figured if I could keep everyone in front of me, I should be able to last longer and ideally win. That night I remember seeing something move out of the corner of my eye, thinking to myself it was one of the kids or counselor. It's also hard to say how dark a forest can get. I know most people like to imagine they can see clearly, but for me it was hard. I kept seeing this quick movement, while I could hear these kids screaming tag, "You're it," and so every time I saw movement I backed deeper and deeper into the forest. Then I hear footsteps rushing right for me, so I took off. As I was sprinting I tripped. It was one of the hardest I ever fell. I remember thinking it felt like I tripped over a little dog. I looked down and there was a rabbit, dead. There was enough blood on my shoes I figured I killed it. But where did the kid go? I got up and kept moving. Out of the corner of my eye I could see a silhouette of a person standing beside one of the trees. But I'll never forget it. The person, although they probably couldn't see me, just started banging their head into the tree, over and over again, violently, speeding up to a pace that was almost inhuman. At that time I had honestly thought it was one of the guidance counselors playing prank on me. I mean, that's the stuff we do all the time. But when I said very funny out loud, the person stopped, looked over at me, and began to sprint full force at me. I took off and remember just sprinting as fast as I could, looking back to see what looked like a man wearing a potato bag as a shirt. I got back to the group and we continued to play. Then all I remember hearing is one of the kids' screams. Not like a normal scream, one of pure terror. The counselors all turned their flashlights on and pointed over to the child's screams, only to notice the screams were going deeper and deeper into the woods, as if they were being dragged away. We started sprinting into the woods as fast as we could, but the screams became more and more distant, until the screams stopped what sounded to be mid-scream. We spent the rest of the night looking through woods and into the morning. Then we saw something to this day I won't ever forget. A dead rabbit nailed to the tree. The rabbit was covered in blood and it hung about head height. A single nail threw the rabbit into the tree. What's more unsettling is it was right around where I thought I saw the other guidance counselor playing a prank on me. You know, the one where the guy was smashing his head into the tree. In the morning we did a head count. The odd thing was everyone was there. There was one child none of us recognized. She looked a little younger than everyone else there and she had the worst hair. It was all dirty and naughty. She cleaned up and stayed pretty quiet for the rest of the time I was there. Not sure exactly what happened that night.
Meeting a murderer.
Years ago my wife and I decided we would sleep in a shelter on the after a long 14-mile hike. We were having dinner with another couple who was camping down the trail a bit around sundown when a man came into the shelter. He turned us down and joining us for dinner and had us sitting on the edge of the shelter watching us. Nightfall came and it was time for bed. My wife and I were the only other people in the shelter that night and tried to make small talk before going to bed. The man finally communicated with us a little as he set up the last of his gear and crawled into his bed, turning off his light. Around 11:30 the man opens his pack and proceeds to pull out some device and open and close it for 30 minutes. The problem is the noise was the distinct noise of a pocket knife. Around 12 the man goes out without a headlamp to use the bathroom. At this point I try to place my wife's hand on the knife beside my pillow because I know she will be awake and terrified as well. The man comes back in the shelter and just stands by his sleeping bag for the next 20 minutes while we lay perfectly still, my back facing him. Then out of nowhere I hear him begin to walk towards us. I panicked and let go of my wife's hand I had been holding and turned over towards him pretending to be startled. I honestly thought I was about to have to fight for my wife's life, not even mentioning my own. The man scurried back to his bag 15 feet away and zipped it up. I am still not sure of his intent to this day, and it bothers me the most. I stayed awake for the rest of the night and would occasionally make noises to make him realize I was awake. At 4:30 a horse, common in this section of the Grayson Highlands, tried to get in the shelter with us, and my wife feigned interest in him to make an excuse to get up. I have never had a longer hike than the 7-mile hike out the next day. Over breakfast and before leaving, he looks at my wife and says, "Sorry if I kept you awake last night. I'm convinced this guy has killed, and keep looking for cases that match."
The boys of the woods.
I was pretty young. I think I was 8 at the time, 53 now. My parents always sent me to camp because they didn't want me around for the summer. I was okay with it. I didn't want to be around those drunks anyway. At least some of the kids I went to camp with was cool. Especially Mac. He's cool. Mac, if you read this, I'll never forget what you did for us. There was 3 or 4 of us that always got into a little trouble. Maybe it was because we all hit trouble homes that shipped us out to camp for the summer, or maybe some other reason. In all honesty, I liked getting into trouble, especially when it was with those guys. Mac, being the oldest and the leader of our group, he always seemed to make things fun. Think about things other didn't, and find ways for us to sneak out of the bunks at night. We snuck out every couple nights. No real reason other than it was fun. One night we snuck out and ran into the forest. I remember that night was pretty normal, although there was a few times I swear I could hear others' voices. Not sure if that plays into this story, but you'll see where we go. A few more nights had passed and Mac told us he knew how to get vodka. He wanted to sneak out and the 3 of us would drink while everyone else slept. I hadn't ever drank before, so I was up for it. We all snuck out and went deeper into the woods than normal. I think we were all wanting to be cautious of getting caught. Vodka tasted like rubbing alcohol. Couldn't for the life of me figure out why people would drink that, but we were having the time of our lives. Finally, a place where we didn't have to deal with parents and people telling us what to do. Out of nowhere, a deep voice says, "What are you boys doing?" Instantly, Mac hides the vodka and I said, "Nothing. What are you doing?" To which a quiet, lighter voice said, "We are just out for a walk." I looked over and couldn't believe what I was seeing. I could see a man full grown and a little kid younger than me, just standing there. My mind raced. Were they part of the camp? Did they know who we were? Did they see us drinking? Keep in mind it's maybe 2 in the morning at this point. The deep voice said, "It doesn't look like you boys are up to nothing." What followed is why to this day I owe Mac. We all do. Mac replied to this man in a tone of voice that I had never heard Mac use. Mac was always assertive, confident, sometimes funny. I could tell Mac was trying to be aggressive, but you could tell there was fear behind his voice when he said, "Listen, you sick fuck. You need to get out of here." Or the man interjected and say, "Or what?" It went dead silent. No one spoke. Better yet, I remember thinking, why did Mac call him a sick fuck? And why does he sound so scared? Him sounding scared made me scared, but what followed made me terrified. The man in a deeper, almost angry voice said, "Our," as he stepped forward, and I could see why Mac was scared. This man was with a boy and completely naked, head to toe, no shoes, just socks and nothing else. I had never seen a grown man naked before. All I remember is feeling nauseous. Why was he naked and holding a little boy's hand? Why did he look angry and the little boy looked happy? Max spoke up and said, "Or it'll cut your dick off. You take one step closer." This was the first moment I realized we were pretty far from camp. The man laughed and said no, he wouldn't. The man in a deep voice said to relax. He wasn't going to do us any harm. He asked if had drank all the alcohol, and asked us if he could have some. There was a moment of silence where no one spoke. I'm not sure, it might have only been 5-10 seconds, but it felt like forever. Then the man spoke. He said, "Listen, no one knows you are out here, right?" To which we didn't answer. He replied and said, "Well, we are in quite the predicament. No one knows you are here. You may or may not have seen something I didn't want you to see. I think my hands have been forced." To this day, I don't know what he meant by that. Was he going to kill us? Tell on us? Rape us? I don't know. I know Max spoke up and said, "Why don't we make a deal instead?" Both the man and the boy looked intrigued. When asked what deal, Max suggested we would give him the alcohol only if he went on his way and left us alone. He repeated the deal back to us in a confused tone. "Okay, you give me the booze and I let you go on your way. How do I know I can trust you? How do I know you won't tell?" Max said he could trust us and we just wanted to go back. The man looked at the little boy he was with and asked him what he thought. The little boy said it sounded like a good deal. The man in a deep voice said, "Well, boys, looks like it's your lucky day. He'll take that deal." Mac threw him the vodka bottle from 5 to 6 feet away. The man took a swig and began walking away with the little boy. We all started walking back in the direction of the camp. I could tell we all wanted to run, but no one wanted to be the first. From about 30 feet away, I remember hearing,
"The deal's off."
the man screamed. We all ran straight back to camp. Thankfully, that was the last time we saw him. The worst part is we all tried telling the seniors that this happened, but because we were troublemakers, no one listened or believed us.